Hello guys, welcome to the channel. I hope you are doing great. So you have to make a critical decision for your organization or for your client whether you should be picking up on-premise Active Directory or Entra ID. So in this short video, I will share with you some of the use cases in which you should be picking Active Directory and some use cases for Entra ID. So let's start the video. So before we start and dive into those use cases for the Entra ID and for Active Directory, so let's have a brief look at the introduction of these both tools. So starting with Entra ID. So Entra ID by Microsoft, formerly known as Azure Active Directory, is a cloud-based directory service that acts as your identity provider and single sign-on solution for your Microsoft products like Team, OneDrive or Shared Drive. Like Active Directory, as Entra ID allows the organization to group users for easier administration and access their resources. It's an online cloud-based identity management tool just like Okta, and it's getting really powerful and popular. I have been using from the past 1 year, and I can tell you guys that this can resolve many challenges for your identity management in your organization. So looking at the Active Directory is an on-premise directory service that allows organizations to establish a local Windows server domain in order to manage a large-scale networks. So it's an on-site, on-premise directory service which will be sitting in your data center or in the server room. So it is actually a database of the users and groups, and you can also use it for Windows device management as well as the service management by using the group policy. So let's dive into the use cases for both of these tools, and let's start with Entra ID first. So the first use case or scenario in which you should be picking up Entra ID, that you are a startup which is a cloud first and SaaS driven company. So if your organization will be primarily use cloud services, which is the case with most of the startup companies, then it makes sense to go with Entra ID. So if you are planning to have a cloud based tools, for example Office 365, Salesforce or ServiceNow, then it makes sense that your authentication and identity management is on the cloud, and Entra ID is the best choice for that. So second use case or scenario, that you have a small IT team or you are not planning to have any IT team for your organization or company. You are planning to outsource is to external IT service providers. So in that case, it makes sense to have an Entra ID. You don't have to worry about building an infrastructure or a server room, installing a server and then managing that server and Active Directory. So you have a very small team or no team at all, then that does make sense to go with Entra ID. Another reason is that your organization have more remote workers or is fully remote, or it's a hybrid workplace. So in that case, you are expecting a secure remote access without the need of VPNs or in-house small server room, and you want to make sure that you can manage the identity very well and you have a distributed environment. In those sort of cases, it does make sense that you should go with Entra ID. Now another use case is that you want to manage the modern devices, or you have a modern device fleet and you are also have users who bring their own devices. In that case, it makes sense that you should go with Entra ID. So when I say modern device fleet, it means that you have Windows devices as well as Apple devices and also some Linux users. In this case, it makes sense to use Entra ID, because with Entra ID and modern device fleets for such as MacBooks, you can easily use Entra ID for authentication, and you're also expecting that your user will be bringing their own devices, and you want to provide them some sort of environment where they will be able to work for your organization. So in that case, it does make sense. So then for your BYOD, you can enforce the conditional access based policies, and then you can avoid the risks. So the last user case, or the reason you should be going with Entra ID, is that you need a zero trust security. So you want to have a tool which can provide you the security as well, so you don't have to worry about managing the security for that tool differently. So Entra ID does provide a zero trust security. It includes the MFA as well. It does have something called identity protection, and it also provides you a real-time assessment as well. So like I said, Entra ID is a very powerful tool, and when it comes to the security, it does provide you that sort of protection as compared to on-premise Active Directory. Now, looking at the use cases for Active Directory, so let's start with the first one is the traditional on-premise infrastructure. So if you are expecting to have on-premise infrastructure, so where you will be having a Microsoft servers for the file shares as well as for the databases, and you will be expecting to have some on-premise apps as well. So in that case, you should be going with on-premise Active Directory. Then your all services on in-house and all the apps can easily be authenticated against the on-premise Active Directory. You don't need to worry about opening up the connection from your data center or your server room or your on-premise to the cloud. The next reason is that you have a specific compliance requirement. So if you want to have a strict control over your data and security, in that case you should be going with on-premise Active Directory. For example, I used to work for an organization which have a requirement that your file data should be staying on site, not on the cloud, and that file share also requires ACL or the security attached to it. In that case, or in those sort of scenarios, it makes sense to have on-premise Active Directory. So the next scenario is if you have a complex forest or domain. So let's assume you are a big enterprise where you have multiple offices or branch offices distributed in different cities or in countries, and each site or each branch have their own premise services as well, which are local to them. In that case, it makes sense to have the on-premise Active Directory. What you can do then, you can build a trust relationship between those Active Directories, as well as you can have the multiple forests as well in one same Active Directory by managing different sites. In that scenario, it does make sense having an on-premise Active Directory. So the last use case is that if you're expecting a rapid growth in your organization, so let's say you are going to have up to 1,000 users or even more users in 3 to 5 years, then it makes sense to go with on-premise Active Directory because it's a cost effective and it's quite cheap in a long run. And obviously with the higher number of users, and if you go with Entra ID premium subscription, you will be paying a lot of money to have that service. So it does make sense that if you are expecting a rapid growth, you plan in advance and have your own premise Active Directory in advance or well ahead, so then you don't have to worry about the cost in the long run. Just to wrap up, Active Directory, it remains a powerful solution for many organizations, especially with on-premise infrastructure, legacy apps, and which also requires some tight controls and compliance requirement. Entra ID, on the other hand, is a modern, it's a cloud-based. It is for the organization which will be focusing towards having a cloud services with a minimum or small IT teams. So that's it from today's video. I hope you have enjoyed this video and like it. If so, please like it and share it with anyone who is seeking this sort of information. I will be making more technical videos in the future. If you do like technical videos, please consider subscribing to my channel, and I will see you very soon in the next video. Until then, take care and I will see you soon.